United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next agenda item is to approve the minutes from the June 14th meeting. All members had a chance to review the minutes.
Yes. Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any discussion? We'll move on to new registration and statistics. Item 4 on the agenda. We had 316 newly registered voters since the last board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve these voters pending review? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 5, I asked Director Snyder if he would please provide us an update of the Board of Election Office.
Okay. Hey everybody, thanks for coming tonight. So currently we're finishing up the 60-day report. And what the 60-day report is we take all of the one-stop absentee, transfer, and provisional votes, and we have to break those out in the precinct so we can tell where everybody came from. So we're about finished with that. Everything looks good. We sent off N100 to Print-Elect for repair. Same-day registration and out-of-precinct voting is back until the courts make their decision, but that has been stayed. So currently the rules are that same-day registration and out-of-precinct voting are allowed. But there are multiple court cases still ongoing, federal and state. We have 2 candidates filed for the soil and water conservation. We're beginning preparation for November, setting up training dates, training materials, poll workers, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. And Donna as well. Works with Matt in the election office. They did an excellent job for us. The next item is the public comment, and we have 30 folks that have registered to speak for public comment. And I ask that everybody be respectful, be civil. This is a board meeting, and we expect you to act very courtesy to others. And Director Snyder has a clock that's going to give 2 minutes per speaker, and at the end of the 2 minutes, an alarm will go off. We ask that you wrap up your thoughts, please. So we'll just go down the list in order as folks have signed up. We'll start with Natasha Athey. I apologize, I didn't pronounce your last name right.
Good evening, my name is Natasha. My name is Natasha Athey, and I'm a senior at Appalachian State University. Sorry. This is my first time. Thank you. My name is Natasha Athey. I'm a senior here at Appalachian State University, and the first time I was eligible to vote, I was old enough in the next election cycle came around. I voted at the student union on campus, and I voted in nearly every election since. I've come up here to talk about how students are members of the community. I live here, I work here, I volunteer here, I go to church here, and I'm also being educated here. And I am not representative of all students, but I do believe that most students are interested and engaged in the politics of our town, and there deserves to be an accessible place on campus for both students and the community to come and vote. So it's my experience. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Next is Jalen Howard.
Hello. My name is Jalen Howard. I'm current incoming student body president here at Appalachian State. So I'm sure with the 28 other people here to talk, I'll kind of make this brief. But through my experience with the early voting site, it was very successful. We haven't had any problems with it. I worked in conjunction with the Chancellor's office to come up with a statement that hopefully you all have. That statement read that both the Student Government Association as well as the Chancellor's office only recommends our student union as the voting site. It was very successful during our early voting site. It's something we really hope to push for. I'm sure students will come up here and tell you the importance of that. I don't really see anywhere else on campus that is suitable or works as well for students. I think students are a very important part of this campus, make up a large demographic of our population here, and them voting is very important. We have, if you all know what ASG is, we have grant money dedicated towards voter mobilization this year, and it's something we plan on taking and utilizing, and that has to do with voting and making sure people are there. And we think the easiest site would be in the student union where everybody is centralized and located. This is an issue that we plan on, if this isn't taken, I think it's an issue that we still have on our platform and is very important. If the Plymouth Student Union isn't chosen, it is still an issue that we want to take up, and we'll make sure is kind of stressed. I honestly don't think there is any other solution to this problem. I think we really have one solution, and both the students, the administration of this campus has said that is in our student union. So hopefully, that is done today, and if not, I guess the conversation will continue, and we look forward to that. Thank you.
Anderson Clayton.
Hello everyone, my name is Anderson Clayton and I'm the Director of External Affairs for the Student Government Association. I voted for the first time on March 3rd in 2016, and along with 3,249 of my peers, I chose to vote on campus in the Student Union. Not because I wanted to wait in line, but because like everyone around me, I wanted to make a statement. The Student Union is in the heart of our campus. It is a building utilized every day by the majority of our students, whether it's from trying to take a shortcut to class or a place to study. Would it not be in the best interest of the board for the voting site to remain at a location that students frequent, therefore increasing the probability of them voting? College students have a right to vote just as any other individual in Watauga County, and I realize you're not threatening our on-campus voting site, but by eliminating the Student Union as a viable option, you are viewed as inhibiting our right to vote in an easily accessible manner. In the letter the Board of Elections sent, it stated the statutory requirements included a chain of custody, adequate parking, ADA-compliant facilities, and a controlled buffer zone. From what I gather, Appalachian State had the locks on each room utilized by the Board of Elections changed, hired parking attendants to allocate the back lot of the Student Union for voter parking, has elevators and ramps that are accessible for wheelchair usage, and no complications with the buffer zone were reported. I have read through the North Carolina General Statutes on elections and election laws and have read no conclusive evidentiary support as to what reason the Board of Elections would utilize to move our on-campus voting site. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a student at Appalachian State, and I am proud to say, like many students before myself, and I'm hoping many students after, that the ASU Student Union was the first place I exercised my right to vote. The Student Union site is of course important to students, but it is also utilized by faculty and staff and many community members who pass their sites to use that early voting site because it's most accessible to them. I hope that we can put aside partisanship and continue to use this site as it is clearly the most accessible site on campus. By 700 votes, it was more utilized than the main early voting site right here in the admin building. Thank you for your consideration.
Hi, I'm a student here at App State, and I just want to basically say is that we decided as a country about 200 years ago that we like this thing called democracy, and we should try and encourage voting. So I ask you then, why would you pick a site that has lower turnout, that's harder for students to use, when you have student turnout that's already low as it is? Should we not be encouraging voting instead, trying to make it so the smallest demographic that votes actually votes more? The State Elected Student Union has been supported by the chancellors, the SGA, and the campus as a whole. It was the most used voting site in March. So I ask you, why would you have it somewhere else? Don't we want the future of our democracy to get out there and vote as easily as possible? It's the only thing that really makes sense. Thank you.
Clark Streets.
Hi there, I'm Clark, also a student at App State. I'm just going to keep it brief. I really don't see any reason why this, as it's been stated, we're not removing the location off of campus, but why not utilize a location that had been so successful in the past? There's no reason why it should not be used in the student union, and that's evident throughout it's been seen in the past. And with that said, I just don't see any reason why it should be removed, especially since it's been so effective. Thank you.
Joan Brand.
Good afternoon. And I am not a student, but I have an opinion. There is an oft-quoted truism that I believe applies here. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it is still a pig. In this case, I believe that the lipstick is using statutory obligations to dress up the pig of voter suppression. Your words, Mr. Aceto, based on the difficulties experienced with buffer zone enforcement, complaints received by the Board of Elections, personal observations of board members and staff, and preliminary discussions of the matter among board members at their meetings, it does not appear that the majority of the board believe the Plemmons Student Union is a workable location to meet our statutory obligations. In March, as has already been noted, over 3,000 voted at Plemmons, and to my knowledge, no documentation of specific problems has been presented. I would also like to note that the board's preliminary discussions and findings appear to be fairly ad hoc. You apparently couldn't state unequivocally that a majority of the board believe that Plemmons is not workable, even though there are only 3 of you on the board. And the implication of that is perhaps only one board member finds it not workable. Thousands will tell you that it is working, has been working, and yet you're seeking a site to replace Plemmons. This lipstick-enhanced pig has been trotted out repeatedly in a barely disguised attempt, in my humble opinion, to make it more difficult by orders of magnitude for ASU students, faculty, and employees to vote, and not, as you would have us believe, because of statutory obligations. Let's just agree here this afternoon that this is still a pig, and will always be a pig, regardless of the cosmetics applied. Let's leave early voting at Plemmons and put this pig out to pasture.
If you could refrain from that in the future, I would appreciate it. This is not a pep rally. We're here to have positive discussion, and I encourage everybody to have an opportunity to speak, and that's why we're here, but it's not a pep rally.
Sir, that was a...
Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me,
Yes, sir.
excuse me.
Yes,
Please refrain.
from speaking.
Yes,
You got it, bud.
thank you. We're going to move to Roger Bushnell.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Roger Bushnell. I have been a resident of North Carolina for 30 years, coming from Canada. And 11 years ago, I managed to get my my U.S. citizenship, primarily because I wanted to vote in the elections of this country and in the state and city in which I live. And I did that. But I have to tell you, as having spent the last 10 years since I was able to do that, I have found it increasingly discouraging that the political process is increasingly attempting to suppress the vote. And I believe that activities like moving a very popular and successful site to a location for whatever reason is another indication of that. And I would encourage you to allow, as the Constitution encourages, as many people to vote and execute their democratic responsibility, as I am pleased to say that I have been able to do since becoming a citizen of this great country. Thank you.
Former Mayor Clausen, Council.
Mayor
Former
Clausen,
Clausen.
right, yes. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
My name is Loretta Clausen. I'm the former mayor of Boone and serve on town council now. And I have worked with the students for many, many years. And I find them to be incredibly informed. I think that it certainly is their privilege to vote, and they deserve the most convenient place to vote. And their schedules are very, very busy. So they need the student union to vote in, and I'm highly in support of the student union for the students. Now, my voting place was in the town of Boone at one time, and now it's been moved way out, which is very inconvenient for me. So I have a busy schedule also. And the student union for me, being I live in town, is a very convenient place for me to vote. I was very pleased in the primary that I was able to vote at the student union. And it's just a convenient place for all of us. Staff votes there, the faculty votes there, I vote there. It's a very used venue. There are many parking spaces there. I don't think anyone has had a problem voting at the student union. And again, I would say that I support the rights of the students in our wonderful town and our wonderful students to have the right to vote in a convenient place. Thank you.
Linda Loach, is that the last name? Linda. Never had it.
Hi, I'm Linda Lunnan. I've been a resident of Watauga County since 1973. I'm a pretty regular voter. I now live closest to the student union of all of the early voting sites, and I want to keep voting there. And I think it's unfair to move it to Legends and make it harder for students to vote. And besides, Legends is not adequate and not an attractive place to vote. Please keep the student union as our voting place. Thank you.
Holly Lacey.
My name is Holly Lacey. I'm an adjunct professor in the School of Music at ASU. And in years past, I've always walked over to the student union, or I have come here to the courthouse to vote. This past March, I was walking with a cane. So I drove to the student union. I parked behind the student union. I found plenty of parking there. I had no issues whatsoever. Everyone was very pleasant. Voting should be easy. It should not be difficult, and that's what I found this past March.
Susan Adams.
My name is Susan Adams, and thank you for the opportunity to voice my thoughts regarding the voting locations for the November election. And I have to change my glasses. A lot of unnecessary effort has gone into attempting to stop students, faculty, staff, citizens who work and live in the downtown area, and those who just find it convenient to vote at the Plymouth Student Center. In March of 2016, the primary election, that voting location accumulated more voters than all the other 4 county locations combined. It was obviously the most popular voting location. It had more than the administration building, more voters. There's ample parking. The chancellor approves of it, the student government approves of it. Obviously, the residents of Watauga County approve of it. But the chairman of the Watauga County Board of Elections does not. Even though at the February 10th, 2016 State Board of Elections meeting, Mr. Aceto and Ms. Owens were reminded by the newest member of the board, James Baker, that the Superior Court Judge Donald Stevens ruled that the plan Mr. Aceto presented at the time did not include the Plymouth Student Union building. And he indicated, this is Judge Donald Stevens, that the plan that was submitted by Mr. Aceto was unconstitutional and aimed to discourage student voting. And he remanded that the plan, backed by the State Board of Elections, with instructions to include an ASU site. It was clear that Judge Stevens' order that resulted in the site being in the 2014 general election weighed heavily on this board. And in their decision, because apparently they believed that in the absence of any changed circumstances, that the same circumstances applied now. Okay, nothing had
Wrap up
changed.
your thoughts.
It is clear that the Plymouth Student Union, with its central location on campus, is the most reasonable place for the election site. In addition, it's indoors so voters do not have to stand outside.
You have any closing thoughts, please?
Yes.
Other than reading the paper?
I hope that the members of the board will listen to their conscience and do what is right, based on the statistics, not on partisan politics, and include this student union as a location.
Okay, thank you very much. Ingrid Kraus.
Thank you for letting us speak today. I appreciate it very much. My name is Ingrid Krause. I've been a resident of Watauga County for over 20 years. From the testimony we have heard so far, and from testimony that has been printed in the newspaper recently, we see that the student union at ASU has been very convenient for voters. What apparently the student union is inconvenient for the Republican members of the Board of Elections in Watauga County. Students, faculty, and staff at ASU are being treated as an inconvenience. They are being treated with disrespect because the Board of Elections, for partisan reasons, would like to move voting away from the student union. Student, faculty, and staff at ASU constitute approximately 20,000 people in our county, more than 20,000. I don't have the exact figures because the part-time faculty were not listed when I looked up the figures. This is over 40%, it is approximately 40% of the population of our county who are being treated as an inconvenience to the partisan aims of 2 members of the Board of Elections of Watauga County. These 40% of people contribute $1.7 billion with a B dollars to our state economy. They contribute greater than $200 million per year locally. I think it would be highly inconvenient if those people chose to protest a partisan injustice that has been adjudicated numerous times economically and remove over $200 million from our local economy. So I implore you to consider what is just and what is economically satisfactory for our local and state economies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Charles Day. I'm a graduate student at ASU, and I'm coming here today on behalf of the Watauga NAACP to deliver a statement. The Watauga Board of Elections proposed, as we've heard, the removal of the Plymouth Student Union as a voting location, but recognizing the need for a non-campus site and given the 2014 court orders requiring its establishment, Chairman Aceto has proposed alternate locations, including Legends, the Great Hall at McKinney Alumni Center, and the Holmes Convocation Center. Aceto has asked that the Student Union not be presented as a location for the early voting plan, saying that the site presents problems that preclude it from consideration in the fall. On behalf of the Watauga County NAACP, I respectfully disagree with this assessment and propose that the union be retained and reinforced as an early voting location. I do so for the following reasons. The Student Union as we've heard, saw the highest turnout of any location in Watauga County during the primary. Its central location provides easy access not only for students but staff and faculty as well, many of whom do not necessarily live in Boone. The administration, as you've heard, and the SGA are behind this location. Chancellor Everett estimates that over 3,000 voters utilize this location without any issue reported to her office. As justification for the removal of the site, Chairman Aceto has suggested that the use of the Student Union site impeded the ability to establish a chain of custody for ballots, the existence of adequate parking, Americans with Disabilities Act compliance, availability of curbside voting, and the establishment and control of a 50-foot buffer zone around the poll, the last of which resulted in complaints received by the board regarding the violations of that buffer zone. We disagree with this assessment in part because Appalachian State University's status as a public university precludes it from non-compliance with the ADA. Parking issues and availability of curbside voting, as you've heard today, have not been issues in the past. Second, because the ability to establish a chain of custody for ballots is an administrative issue, as is the establishment and enforcement of buffer zones. And last, because the complaints about buffer zone enforcement are non-specific and contradicted by the statement from Chancellor Everett's office. If these are the primary rationale for the removal of the site from consideration, they should be clarified in greater detail, at least with regards to their content. Thank you.
Thank you. Carter?
I'm Todd Carter, the president of the local Watauga NAACP chapter. And in addition to retaining this site, we want to appeal for a strong early voting plan for all of Watauga County. This includes extending evening and weekend hours, including Sunday. We need a Sunday. And we make this request because long lines, more voters participating in early voting will relieve the long lines and stress on election officials on election day, and also reduce the need for dividing precincts and opening more election day polling sites. The more people that vote early, the less stress it is on the Board of Elections. Common math. Better opportunities for voters. Early voting centers provide flexible opportunities, especially for working voters. By opening on weekends and evenings after normal work hours, Saturday and Sunday voting have the highest use per hour, with the Sunday being the highest. I want to repeat that. Saturday and Sunday have the highest use per hour, with Sunday being the highest. One-stop problem solving. Voters who have moved within the county or changed information can update their registration at any early voting center, which cuts down the need for provisional ballots on election day. Again, cutting out the workload. Although we may not be able to see preliminary plans being voted on, these are concerns we would like to see addressed in whatever early voting plan that you propose. We at the NAACP are willing to work with the board to recruit extra workers and volunteers if necessary. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Hello, thank you for hearing my comments. I'm Dr. Harvard Ayers, and I taught at Appalachian for 44 years. Just recently retired, and I've lived in Boone for almost 50 years. I was very interested throughout my career in students having an opportunity to grow over these 4 years that they're here, or is it 5? Maybe it's 5 nowadays. In any case, one of those things that I wanted them to grow in was to realize how important it is to vote. So I went to classes, I and other faculty, and we actually worked in a very nonpartisan fashion to register in Boone any students that wanted to register. And we registered a whole lot of students, thousands of students over time. Let me give you a few problems with the student union. 8,000 people voted there in 2008, 7,000 of which were students. In the most recent election, there were 3,300 people that voted at the student union. Those are the problems, because in 2008, the Democratic presidential candidate won 6,500 votes in Watauga County, and the Republican candidate won 3,500. So it was 6,500 to 3,500. That's basically the problems. So we need to look at that and see if we really want to discourage young people from voting. Disenfranchisement is the D word, and I ask you please take these things into account. Thank you.
Eric, is it Plague or Flag? Sorry.
My name is Eric Plagg. I'm a resident of Boone. I also came from a very conservative family growing up. I campaigned for Ronald Reagan when I was 17 years old and not yet old enough to vote in college. And I learned in the process of campaigning for Reagan that Republicans did not have my best interests at heart, because I saw that they routinely wanted to keep people who disagreed with them from participating in our democracy. I saw that they always had the short-term goal in mind and not the long. And it has always puzzled me. I understand the short-term goal, but it has always puzzled me why in the long-term goal you would want to say to a young person, you can't vote. I'm going to make it harder for you to vote. Because over the long course of people's lives, they remember that. If I had been told when I was 18 years old, yeah, we're going to make it hard for you to vote the way that you want to vote, and there was a particular party telling me that, or someone representing that party, I would never participate in that party again. Which is why today, while registered unaffiliated, I vote consistently Democratic. You asked me, and everyone else in this room, to recite with you the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of this meeting. With liberty and justice for all. Every last person who has spoken before me has said exactly the same thing to you. Do not disenfranchise these students. Do not disenfranchise the people of Boone who have a right to vote. Do the decent thing. Do the democratic thing. Do the thing that you pledged allegiance to do.
I'm Howie Neufeld. I'm a professor in the biology department, and I don't think anybody can beat that eloquent speech. Thank you very much. But the one thing I want to add is that I'm very proud of the students who came here today. I'm glad you're participating in the democratic process, and I would like to see more of it, and I hope you can encourage your fellow students to get out and vote wherever this ends up, but hopefully at the student union. And the criteria that the board is using to justify moving it has been disavowed by the chancellor and by everybody you've heard here today. And yet you continue to persist in this. And it seems to me there's only one word that can be used if you're up against the facts, and that's just lying. And so we do not want liars on the Board of Education, and we want the student union to be the place where we vote so we can encourage more voting and not disenfranchise people just because they don't vote the way you want to. Thank you.
Well, there's two sides to every story.
I live on Beach Mountain. It's 24 miles one way from the nearest one-stop voting location. On Sunday, I received a telephone message from a group called Voting Rights Task Force. This got me wondering what's going on. I inquired and was told some wanted a one-stop at ASU Student Union. Isn't the Student Union a social meeting place? Why can't students who are young and healthy walk to Legends or the courthouse or any other place that the board deems that meets the regulations? You are arguing over moving a second downtown voting site less than 300 yards from campus when the tax-paying voters of Beach Mountain are asked to drive almost 1 hour to vote one stop. Why are you concerned about students and not all Watauga County voters? My question to you is the Student Union's easy access to all voters, is it?
Yes.
We need Legends as a one-stop. It is easy for all county voters to use Legends as a one-stop. Remember, you are asking Beach Mountain voters and all other county voters to give special, easy access to voting. The best solution is to make Legends the one-stop voting precinct. This is equal to all voters. Thank you.
T. Berry.
Hello, I also live at Beach Mountain, and I too am wondering why we have to drive an hour each way for one stop. If we want one stop to be convenient for everyone, it should be convenient for everyone. I am delighted to see so many students here talking. I think it was great. Kind of reminded me when I was a student, I liked to be involved in talking a lot. But I wanted to say I'm really glad and surprised that they're really involved, because I have immediate family members who are ASU graduates, and I have never heard anyone complain about where they had to vote. I know they voted, but I never heard anybody complain about it. So I guess it's good that everybody is talking about where he or she should vote.
Thank you. Brandy Peel.
Randy Green. Thank you. Yeah. I just wanted to come here and reiterate something that was said a little earlier about the short-term versus the long-term goals. I'm a sociologist, and one of the things that I look at is the voting patterns of young people. And young people are increasingly moving away from the Republican Party. And part of the reason they are doing that is because they feel disenfranchised by the Republican Party. What's going on today is one more example that is going to ultimately lead to the Republican Party becoming more more populated by older white voters, and they're going to leave out an entire generation. I would recommend to the board that for the betterment of all parties, they act to enfranchise these student voters and to allow the voting center at Plymouth Student Union to remain in place. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Mark Coates, and I'm a small business owner here in Boone. I've been here several years, and I live right smack dab in the middle of Boone. Okay. My business demands that I drive a big old flatbed truck. Okay. My business demands that I pull about a 16-foot trailer at least 5, sometimes 6 days a week. For me to go onto campus, which is very rare because of my work and what it takes for me to run my business, it's unfair to expect me to try to find a parking place in the middle of campus when every time that I've voted at Legends, I've had no problems at all. I ask that you keep the voting precinct at Legends I've never had a problem there. And with all due respect, I didn't understand what the lady said earlier, that she thought it was a wonderful, or she didn't think it was a wonderful place to vote. I thought it was a great place to vote, and it works for me. So I ask again that the precinct be kept at elections, because it's just not feasible for me to, again, try to find a parking place on campus. I mean, we can't even park downtown hardly without getting a parking ticket. You know? So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Sue Counts.
Good evening. I'm Sue Counts, and I'm here this evening as a concerned community member and daughter to a man who gave deeply of himself for the security of American values. My father, Ray Clinton Counts, served during World War II at the Battle of the Bulge and was taken prisoner of war by Nazi Germany. When our nation remembers why he and so many others sacrificed during those difficult years, we invoke the founding ideals of our country and their triumph over outside forces. Chief among those ideals is the right of all citizens to have a say in who represents them in government. I come here tonight with a heart full of gratitude. I'm grateful to the State Board of Elections for having previously concluded that the student union is the best location for an on-campus voting site. I'm grateful as well to North Carolina's justice system for affirming that decision. I'm grateful to Chancellor Efforts for standing up for the students and university workers. And most of all, I'm grateful to the many citizens of Watauga County who have exercised their right to vote at the student union and elsewhere. It is my hope to leave here this evening with a sense of gratitude renewed. Gratitude to this board for putting the founding ideals of this great nation above petty partisanship. So many have given so much of themselves to protect our rights from outside actors who would seek to curtail them. It would be a shame if those gathered here today were to negate those brave acts in any way. I thank the members of the Board of Elections for your time this evening and for your attention to this very important matter.
David Harmon.
Hello, my name is David Harmon. I've been a resident of Watauga County for about 66 years. I've been an active voter, having only missed a few voting opportunities over that time. The centerpiece of a healthy, functioning democracy is the right to vote. Unfortunately, the voter turnout is typically lower than it ought to be. Statistics show that, as a rule, the decade age of people tends to correspond with the percentage of those folks who vote. The 20-somethings pretty low, 40-somethings more, the 60-somethings the highest. It's important to this democracy that this newest generation take part in the process. This is all we have, is the democratic process, is the right to vote, the right to be heard, and the right to be represented. If we do anything that discourages it, we're actually hurting our democracy for the long term. I don't care who these students vote for, but if we do anything that makes it more difficult for them to vote, it's against our own long-term interests. I have voted the last 2 times I've had an opportunity. I have voted at the student union. I found parking easy, access easy, and it was really exciting to see the excitement of the young people, many of whom were voting for the first time. Don't take this away from them. Don't make it harder. Don't make it something that turns them away. Make it easier for them. If you have been around campus, you know that the center of student life is the student union. There's really only one logical place to let the students vote, and it's at the student union. Please do not try to change it. Thank you.
Two names on the next line, Lyle and Wanda. Would you both like to speak?
No, Lyle.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lyle Schoenfeld, a resident of Watauga County for 20 years. I'm speaking as a member of the community. I always voted the Plymouth Student Union. It's a wonderful place to vote. I can't think of a single reason that anybody would not want to vote there. Easy parking, accessibility, a vibrant and wonderful atmosphere. I urge you to continue to have that as a location, as a voting site. Thank you.
Pam Lowson, would you like an opportunity to speak?
No, not
Okay.
really.
I didn't think
And
so.
before Matt starts counting my time, I just want to say, as for
Please go ahead and
Beach,
start counting.
as for Beach Mountain, I'm all in favor of Beach Mountain having an early vote. So.
You're going to donate the money to fund the site for us?
Well, sure, I'm all about raising taxes.
Thank you.
You haven't started yet, right, Ben? I really enjoyed a lot of what I heard here tonight. I just got back in town myself and really enjoyed hearing it. And I really enjoyed Joan Brannon's comment about lipstick on a pig. That's a phrase I use a lot. And it reminded me, you know, of all kinds of different phrases, one of which is, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So I thought we might look at the duck for a minute. This board started off by trying to take all of the in-town voting sites and consolidating them into a super precinct of, I forget how many, 9,000 voters and 37 parking spaces. So parking worries are a new thing here. They were only stopped by someone at the State Board of Elections and Rachel Maddow, I would add. Then they took the biggest site in the town of Boone, New River 3, and where the majority of the people live in town and at the Armory, where everybody had local transportation to it, they moved it all the way out to a corner of the precinct. They moved it a couple of times. The last time all the way out to Mount Vernon Baptist Church, which people go, where is it? I know that Bill always has concerns about people not knowing where something is. There are a lot of people who don't know where that is and there's no public transportation. So then they decided we won't have any early voting at all at the ASU, and it took a court order to make that happen. On behalf of that voting rights task force that called the folks in Beach Mountain to tell them to be here today. So here's the duck. You've already heard that the ASU Student Union voted the most voters in the primary of any other site, including the primary site, and voted more than all the other satellite sites with far fewer voters. Some only had 200 people show up. None of us is here arguing for you to take that away. So why would you move a site that the chancellor already said is the only site? Why would you move that site? It's because Bill says, well, there may not be any documented complaints, but he's heard a bunch of them in bars and other places. If it's not in there, it's not there. And the only complaints that I know of that are in there are that the lines were too long and that Four Eggers was shuffling papers around inside the voting booth.
Can you please wrap up your comments?
Here's a wrap up to my comment. You all moved that site to Legends, a nightclub where you know it's dark and dank, where there's not as much parking, and where fewer people will go. That's the duck. This is about discrimination of a targeted group of people.
Frederick Brown in the room. 338 Brook Hollow Road. Okay. Alex Sotomayor.
Hello, my name is Alex Sotomayor. I'm a recent graduate of Appalachian State University and glad to see so many familiar faces here tonight. I just wanted to speak to the campus culture. I'm not knowledgeable about statistics or about voting particularities. I'm sure that those things would have been helpful for me to have looked up before I came here today, but I wanted to speak to campus culture and that I know from walking around and registering student voters, most students didn't even know that you could vote on campus. They had no idea. They had no idea what it took to register to vote. They had no idea whether they were registered or not. And so just speaking to the lack of information that college students have, taking away a popularly recognized and popularly used voting site would complicate the lives of many students. Not to mention, I lived on the west side of campus for my first year of college, and it takes a student a full hour to walk from Stadium Drive to Legends. And when you only have 20 minutes in between classes and you're also trying to figure out how to feed yourself on the $3 you have that day, that's not an hour you have. So I would highly implore the board to please take into consideration the stressors on the life of a student and how convenient, fun, safe, and easy it is to vote at ASU Student Union Clemens. Thank you.
Nathan Miller.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm Nathan Miller. I'm a resident of Watauga County, former chairman of the county commissioners here, and I'm fat and it doesn't take me an hour to walk from Stadium Drive to Legends. But I would like to first thank the board for sending, I'm also on the board of trustees for the Caldwell Community College, and I'd like to thank the board, both Mr. Cito and Ms. Anderson, for sending letters to that board to encourage them. I understand that we seem to only care about one group of people, but there are also students on that board, on that campus, and they should be given the same opportunities. Here's the problem with the student union, and we all know it, is it is impossible to police by statute to ensure that there's no electioneering going on in there. Prior to, I'd appreciate the opportunity to speak. I have allowed everybody else the opportunity to speak uninterrupted. That board, the previous Democratic Board of Elections, allowed electioneering inside the building, which was clearly in violation of the statute, and now it is impossible with the many exits and the many rooms in there to cease all electioneering. The easier option is for Legends. Also to make it available to all, not just ASU students, but all, encourage everybody to vote, is to put the election site on an easily and visible, accessible place on a corridor. With the student union, it is on a side street, on Howard Street. The corridor is the better place, so I would encourage you to put the voting site at Legends. Thank you.
Molly Hundley.
Thank you for, my name is Molly Finch Hundley. I live at 138 Way Street here in Boone, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. When I was a student, finished in 1961, I could navigate the campus around really well. I never thought I would be in the shape I'm in today. I had a grandson that graduated back in December, and he had I just love Appalachian State University. It has opened a lot of doors for my family and me, and I've taught for 40 years, and it's hard for me to get around now. And as I've grown older, it's become increasingly difficult for me to get around. This is why Legends is a much better location for our polling place. We can get in and out easily without navigating stairs, narrow halls, and students hurrying and rushing to class, looking at their iPhones. And if I were to fall, my quality of life would even be affected worse than it is now. I respectfully request that you make the polling place for Boone 2 permanently at Legends. Thank you.
Caroline Yates.
Hi, my name is Caroline Yates. I'm born and raised, and I was born and raised in Boone, Watauga County here. I live on 789 Stadium Drive. I'm a former Appalachian student, and the past 2 years, well, 2 years ago previously, with the election at the student union, I was actually in the student union and saw that one party was actually giving out picks and sample ballots inside the buffer system. So having it at the student union, there's no regulation for the buffer system, and I do have proof of that, and she was handing them out actually while people were standing in line trying to vote at the student union. Furthermore, parking, yes, it's accessible for the voters, and that's awesome, but the students and faculty and staff who pay a semester to park in that parking lot have to be moved. So where do they have to move their cars to? And having more people in the student union is a congestion. Moving the polling place to Legends makes more sense. We're not taking away the right for students to vote. If they want to vote, they can walk to Legends. Taking away the right for students to vote would be taking it off campus completely. When Legends turns into a night bar, then nobody has any complaints about walking down there about how far it is from campus. Thank you.
Anne Marie Yates.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and speak. Just as Mrs. Afee, I think her name was, said, students and the community deserve a place to vote that is safe for all. You have heard testimony from Mrs. Hunley, a longtime resident of Boone 2. I am here to represent many who have called me concerned about going into the crowded student union area. Students with 10 minutes to get to their next class use the student union as a shortcut, as testimony has bared out today, with their heads down in their phones, making this dangerous for our older citizens, many of who have sacrificed for the right to vote. As a worker at that poll area, I witnessed and reported infractions and electioneerings both outside and inside the building. We want everyone's right to vote protected and for all to participate in the process. Legends is in the middle of the Boone 2 district, which is sometimes often forgotten because Appalachian is actually split by 2 precincts. Why should the residents of the precinct be disenfranchised from voting any more than the students? Why are their votes suppressed when there is an easy solution? Despite the many who would pull at your heartstrings, this is not about partisan politics. It is about the care of your fellow citizens. I recently walked through that neighborhood and I have obtained 30 signatures on a petition asking you to keep that location at Legends, and this is all nonpartisan, Democrats, unaffiliated, and Republicans alike. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody that took the opportunity to speak today. Those are all the names I had written down on our list for public comment. In the next phase, I'd like to take a 10-minute recess. The next agenda item, we'll have discussion as a board. We'll close the public comment session, and then we'll have a vote on establishing the early voting sites for the November election. So we'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you. Okay. Next agenda item, item 7, discussion and vote of one-stop plan for the November 8th election. I'll turn the mic over to Member Anderson and let her start us off.
I would like to make a couple of comments in response. Oh,
Please use the mic.
yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. A couple of comments, I think, to hope to clarify some of the comments that were presented through public comment. Number one, what we're considering tonight is strictly the location for early voting, not a change of the Boone to Election Day polling place, which is at Legends, and that's not under consideration. So it's at Legends for Election Day. This is all strictly about where early voting would be for campus. There was another comment, it escapes me now, maybe it'll come to me later in terms of some things that maybe should be clarified from, so that everybody's kind of on the same page. I have only just now am clear that your proposal is for Legends, is that correct?
That is correct.
To serve campus. I want to walk through several documents and talk about some required processes here. So do you want me to go ahead and do that now, or do you want to?
Please.
Okay. All right, so you sent a letter to Chancellor Everts, the president of Caldwell Community College, President Boehm, and the SGA president. You did this in May. I also sent a letter adding some information that I felt that at least the university deserved to know. In your letter, you, in essence, told Chancellor Everts, do not recommend the student union. I want your recommendations as it relates to use of Legends, use of McKinney Alumni Center, and possible use of the ASU Convocation Center. In my letter, I made clear that if the board does not reach a majority decision on an early voting plan, this board does not have final say on what it'll be. It will have to be considered by the State Board of Elections. I also made clear that several things. Number one, Bill, you have repeatedly talked about complaints and problems with the student union. Included that as a reason for why the majority of the board has determined that the Plymouth Student Union is unacceptable or not a workable solution. In Chancellor Everts' response, she asked you to please provide those documentation of those complaints and those problems. Have you done that?
So they're in a packet that had Director Snyder sent out this morning to all the board members. There's multiple complaints. It's a party packet. And I've personally witnessed multiple issues and election violations at ASU Student Union. Multiple times the Democracy NC had asked one lady to leave 3 times electioneering inside the building. So it is a problem. It has continued. I will say the local parties were not in, I didn't notice them in violation of this. I would commend some of the local party activists that they did abide by the law, and I appreciate that.
So Chancellor Everts said that in the absence of documentation of problems that would make the student union unacceptable to comply with the legal requirements for a voting location, that she was of the mind that only Plymouth Student Union would meet our mutual goals for convenient and safe voting location. I also informed her in my letter that following your statement that there had been multiple complaints and problems with the student union, I asked Matt Snyder for all incident reports indicating problems, and I got those, and this was shortly following the receipt of Bill's letter. I examined those. I can kind of summarize what you can gather from looking at the incident reports. For everybody's benefit, you should understand that now, not prior, but now the state board requires that these incident reports be uploaded to the state system in real time, meaning immediately following the conclusion of an election. And so there's a documentation process for official complaints and existence of problems, so that the state board also knows about it. The board should know about it so that we could work to try to remedy subsequent problems going forward. There is not a single complaint about electioneering buffers, enforcement of buffers, about the student union for the March primary.
Multiple complaints, and I've witnessed those problems.
I'm referring for the moment to the incident reports that Director Snyder filed with the State Board of Elections. I can address
There was a complaint, one of
the
the complaints.
incidents that you encountered.
So as an example, this is not one that I encountered, but a phone call that Director Snyder received from a gentleman that was upset about unable to find the student union, and he actually called and did file a formal complaint with the local board, with the board office.
Yes, and you included that single incident report in your document that you've titled Findings of Fact of the Majority of the Watauga County Board of Elections. You did not include any of the other incident reports, of which there were many.
Not for the March election, but there are incident reports from previous elections.
Yeah, from previous elections, which
There's
I'll talk about
photos
in a
and there's
minute.
violations that are pretty evident.
You did not include any other incident reports, including the single complaint from the March primary about violation or potential violation of electioneering buffers was made about legends by a candidate, about complaining this would have been election day because voting at Legends was only on election day. He was upset that pizza was being passed out to those who were in line to vote at Legends on election day. Most of the other incident reports were about polling places out in the county, including not making available curbside voting, not making the buzzer for curbside voting available, etc. That's the nature of the formal documented, quote, complaints or reports of incident problems, including malfunctioning equipment, etc. But about facilities, that pretty much sums it up. So that's the process. And Bill, I don't understand why, if you had repeated interactions with Democracy NC people, etc., at the student union in March, you did not go through the steps that you should have taken, I believe, to formally document that in an incident report, and then that would have been submitted to the state board, and it would be the record, okay?
Well, the record's here today, and I have documented it. It's well documented, and in response to, excuse me, public comment session is over. No, please refrain from any comment.
Let me address the complaints that Anne Marie Yates and I don't know if it's her daughter made about the general election in 2014, about violations of electioneering buffers at the student union. Those complaints, which I've never seen, are in your document, and those complaints were submitted to the North Carolina GOP as a poll observer, you know, reporting a complaint. You were copied by email on at least one of those. And I want you to walk me through what you did in response to receiving an email copy of those complaints of what were believed to be electioneering buffer violations. Tell me what you did when you were copied in 2014.
Immediately send that to our director for them to address it.
That's not included in your packet. What is included is
an email chain that states that.
is
Thank
an
you very much for the
email
information.
from the gentleman who I guess is associated with the North Carolina GOP voter protection, whatever, their legal hotline, who said that he would call and discuss the issue with Director Hodges and ask that greater monitoring and reminders and enforcement of the buffer zones take place.
Correct.
Why would there not be, why do you submit your complaint to your state party instead of the county board of elections? That's what you should do. That's what you should do.
I did not submit the complaint to the state party, and I'm not involved with that. The complaint was sent to me, it was sent directly to Director Hodges, and she failed to notify anyone and even to file that there was a complaint, which I find, how many other complaints that were made that were not filed and not on record? That's the question that should be asked.
I wish former Director Hodges were here this evening, because you are more than insinuating that she acted inappropriately and basically what? Destroyed or failed to keep something that would have been an official record out of the Board of Elections office?
It was nowhere reported.
Did you call her and ask
That was what
about
my
her
email stated.
recollection of formal complaints from the 2014 general election?
So, Stella, are you here to continue to discuss this, or are you going to just have accusations towards me? I think we need to move along.
I'll move along, but I'm not going to give credence to so-called complaints that you want to present as if there's scads of them. Consider the number of people who voted and who have consistently voted at the student union in an early voting period, and consider that relative to any complaints that we've received.
I would consider those numbers inflated based on robocalls, misinformation, and general parties that are encouraging any and everyone to go to certain locations to inflate the numbers. I think it's very clear that that's been a strategy that's used.
Well, you say this is findings of fact. Facts are the number of people who actually voted. Facts are the number of people who voted at any given, utilized any given location, where they came from, their ages, etc.
And the reason I have these findings of facts is because it's a fact that you will appeal this decision. It will be non-unanimous and will end up going to the state board, as you mentioned before. It's unfortunate that it comes down to this, and we have to have findings of fact and build a court case every time we want to establish an early voting site.
I know how Nancy's going to vote.
Pam, that's your first warning. We will be civil here.
Okay, for the record, I'm going to submit copies of all the incident reports that Director Snyder gave me in May, and I want it noted in the minutes that I'm submitting them for the record. And then I want it noted in the minutes whether or not you or anybody else from Board of Elections office or Nancy ever responded to ASU's chancellor regarding the request to see documentation of these complaints. And I want that entered into the minutes. And I expect to see that in the minutes, at our next meeting. I have a right to enter stuff into the record, and I have a right to ask that certain things be noted in the minutes. Those are the incident reports.
And I'll be happy to fill those out that you've requested.
And if you have not responded to ASU Chancellor Everett's request to see documentation of complaints, then look at her letter. Her letter ends with, in the absence of documentation about complaints, then she and her staff have decided that the only agreeable location that meets our mutual goals for safe and convenient voting is the ASU Student Union.
I'd like to remind you, this is our board decision, not the chancellor's decision.
Yes.
And I think it's, this is a power that, has been appointed to us. We take it very serious, and I think it's important to remember that we are the ones that are voting. I asked for a simple dialogue to have other options, alternatives other than ASU Student Union, and a couple other sites that I mentioned on ASU's campus, and I did get a response, but I had no other alternatives. So you're saying there's only one location on ASU campus, it's an all or nothing approach. This is the only site that you want to use as a voting site?
That's what she said.
Well, I've asked you this question before, and you stated that it's all or nothing. Only Student Union will you agree to put that as a voting site?
You indicate in this findings of fact that I have never offered any other alternatives or engaged in discussion about alternatives for ASU campus. That is not true.
So what's an alternative voting site?
We discussed Legends. We discussed the Convocation Center. Nancy, you probably will recall, you asked me if there's a way that we could come to an agreement and would Legends be acceptable to you. And what I said, and what I firmly stand behind, is I believe it is indefensible and unprofessional at a minimum for this board to demand the use of a revenue-producing facility from ASU when we have freely offered the student union, and it's been demonstrated to be an effective and well-utilized site. I will not participate in demanding the use of Legends, which is a revenue-producing facility on ASU's campus, and take something that they derive income from offline for 10 days on end. It's very different to use a facility for a single day on election day. It's a totally different matter to command its use for 10 days on end. And I would also say that that is a applicable issue as it relates to both the McKinney Alumni Center and the Convocation Center. It will be football season. There will be gatherings at the McKinney Alumni Center during that very period for 2 weekends, probably, with football games. During that time, there are basketball games in the Convocation Center. There's basketball practice. Bill, you even said to me, we could use a class, I'd like to see if we could use a classroom in the Convocation Center. And I said very clearly, we cannot command a classroom. We cannot command from Caldwell Community College classroom space and be disruptive to their schedule when classes are in session. We should not be engaging in that as a board. We just should not.
And I have a printed out calendar here for October and November for Legends Social Center, and there's no dates. There's nothing booked on any of these dates for the 2 months. So
they likely will be.
So to say that there's things that are currently that are going to be inconvenience, there's nothing currently on
Here's
the calendar.
what the university does as it relates to Legends. It goes about the business of trying to get a contract with a band for every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night when classes are in session. So there would be 6 of those days during the early voting period where that facility would be offline and they could not even try to enter into getting contracts for bands to come in there for events. The money that is, as I understand it, that is charged for admissions to Legends goes back to student organizations. It supports student clubs and student organizations. So it's indefensible. It is indefensible to take offline a facility like that for 10 days on end when we have the student union.
I would hardly call the Legends as an income producer for the university. If anything, it's probably a lost leader in revenue. I think the idea is for student environment and enjoyment is to have, it's more an amenity to students to come and to have bands, but they're not actually producing a lot of income.
In the absence of them revealing the revenue that is produced from it, whatever revenue it is wrong for us as a public board to be commanding space that is a revenue-producing space, rejecting space that the university has freely made up. There's a reason why this is in the student union, because the student union is a multi-purpose building. They can accommodate voting in one of those rooms because they can put other events elsewhere. If they don't have Legends, there's no other place to have these band events.
But as a board, we have to look at the entire group, all of the citizens of Watauga County, and I think it's important to remember that we're not just catering to one group versus
No, we're
another?
not. And if you look at where voters who chose to go to vote at the in the early voting period at the ASU Student Union, you will see that they reside all over this county. And all 3,000 or 5,000 or whatever it's been at various past elections managed to find it. Managed to find it just fine. And actually, they had a choice of where they would go to early vote. If there's 6 locations, in theory, everybody has 6 choices. And you don't have to go to the student union. If you prefer, you can go to the admin building. Or if you find convenient, the Meade Camp Fire Department, or the Deep Gap Fire Department, or the Blowing Rock Town Hall, or the Western Watauga Community Center, you go there. You have choices. No one is made to go anywhere with regard to an early voting location.
I think it's
You
important to be
choose the one that you
consistent.
find to be convenient.
And as part of that consistency is voters do know Legends as an election day voting site, and so I think.
And now they know the student union as a long-standing early voting location.
You can count on one hand. I'll move this section along. Since Member Anderson has stated other voting sites within the county, the board has considered in the past, there's been 5 sites, and those have included Meade Camp, Western Watauga, Blowing Rock, the administration building, which is adjacent to the courthouse, and the Deep Gap Fire Department. Those locations are all, if you draw a radius around those locations, and every voter within that precinct is within 5 miles of that location. So I think it's very helpful for us to have the outlying districts. I think we all can agree on that.
We do all agree.
That's one thing we agree on, which is you can applaud that if you like, but I'm sure you're not going to.
Well, I think it's telling that the minority member on this board, whether that was Kathleen Campbell or whether now you're talking about me, have never, ever even thought about doing away with the out in the county 4 locations, in spite of the fact that they don't draw very many voters. It's not about taking away sites that are out in the county. It's about maintaining the one that's on campus.
And we're going to continue to do that by having a site on campus. And a site that's less than 200 yards from the other site.
Right.
I find it very hard to believe there's that much.
If I understand that the plan you're proposing, it's next door in lieu of the Board of Elections.
Correct.
It's the admin building.
Correct.
It's what have now become the traditional 4 county sites,
Correct.
okay? And it's Legends as the 6th site, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And the statute requires 216 hours as a matching requirement with the state. And the plan that I'm proposing has 304 early voting hours. So we're well over almost 100 hours over the minimum requirement. There's not many counties in the state that can say that. And I'm proud that we offer more voting hours than the majority counties in North Carolina.
So, assuming that we are not going to be unanimous, which I guess is clear, my plan would differ from your plan only in the sense of Legends versus the Plymouth Student Union, and I've made very clear the reasons why I will not support Legends.
I think I made it very
And why
clear.
I believe it's more than justified, rational, etc., to have the early voting site at the student union. And there's one thing, Bill, that you're going to have to come to terms with. There's a statute which will require, if you do not have an agreement for use of an existing agreement for use of a facility, and I'm referring to 163-227.2G1, that talks about the process that's required when you do not have an existing agreement for the use of a facility, a taxpayer-supported facility. You must request at least 90 days prior to the start of one-stop absentee voting. That request has to clearly identify the building or any specific portion thereof requested, the dates and times for which the building or specific portion thereof is requested, and the requirement of an area for election-related activity. And then if the agency that controls the building responds within 20 days negatively, in other words, that they're not in agreement with it, then that entity, which in this case would be ASU, and the County Board of Elections shall, in good faith, work to identify a building or specific portion thereof in which to conduct one-stop absentee voting, and if no building or specific portion thereof has been agreed upon within 45 days from the date of the County Board of Elections receiving a response to the request, the matter shall be resolved by the State Board of Elections. Now, maybe you have a better sense of this than I do. I read Chancellor Everett's letter, and I do not see how you're going to get her agreement for Legends. Do you believe you're going to get her agreement for use of Legends?
I would hope we have their cooperation. It is a voting site on ASU's campus. If they hold that site hostage, I think it'd be very unfortunate. I think it is, we have comment from both sides today. I think we have to look at everybody in this community as a whole. And I feel like it's being very one-sided at the moment. I think, you know,
well, I will require that you follow this process. And this process then will stretch out well into the period when apparently the state board will have to consider the two competing plans anyway. Okay? You're going to go to the State Board of Elections. You're not going to have an agreement, is my guess, with the university. And you're going to be putting the state board in a position to demand from the university Legends.
so we're talking about two sites less than 200 yards from each other, and we have a printed out calendar that has that building available.
The statute
it's very clear.
is there for a reason. The statute is saying you need to work to come to a mutual agreement about the location of these sites. We actually do not have the authority to absolutely command or demand the space. Not in this instance. No, we do not. We do for election day. We do not for 10 days on end of early voting. So you're going to have to follow this process. And a plain read of Everett's letter says that the only thing that she's agreeable to is the student union.
That letter was sent for a dialogue, and obviously I did not receive the dialogue back. I would like to go ahead and move forward with my plan and go ahead and have a vote on
Well,
it.
you need to send the letter, the notice, tomorrow.
Okay?
Yeah. You need to get the 90 days
And that's what we're having a meeting
underway,
today,
the
which
20
is why
days
we
for
moved our
response,
meeting
the
up.
45 days, etc.
So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. My motion would be to have 6 one-stop voting location sites, including Meat Camp, Western Watauga, Blowing Rock, the administration building, which will serve as our board of election statutory requirement, Deep Gap, volunteer fire department, and Legends. For those hours, I'd like to propose the administration building, which is our election office site, 8 to 5. For the outlying areas, I'd like to propose 10 to 5. And for the Saturday, the last Saturday, I would like to propose 8 to 1. Do I have a second? So I would, and Rainerson, would you like to have any discussion?
I do have some other, I want to work my way through your findings of fact document, but if you want to go ahead and vote on the early voting plan, that's fine, but
Okay.
I do have several things that I want noted about this document.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We asked for clarification, Saturday, 8 to 1, is that at all sites?
That'd be at the, thank you for clarifying, be at the downtown location, which is the administration building.
Are you not proposing any after, so-called after or before work hours, traditional work hours?
I am not. 10 to 5. And part of my reasoning, I think it's a stretch with our staff. You know, we'll be discussing a new hire, but I think it's a lot of pressure on our staff to have these long hours, and I think it's important to be within the business hours for the early voting. And as you've witnessed in the past, these hours have even changed at the state level, so we vote on today most likely will be out of our hands if it's not a unanimous decision.
I thought in the past we had come to an agreement that it was important to at least maybe go from 5 to 6 or something that provides people who work an opportunity to utilize early voting outside of, you know, kind of the hours of 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. I mean, they have the one Saturday. But, I mean, I really think we should have at least some evening after hour.
We talked about making Fridays.
But if this is the plan you proposed and it's been seconded, then these are the hours, right?
We go ahead and vote on it. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Me.
Okay. So that, is there other items you'd like to discuss? Okay.
Yeah. So I want to refer to several things. Number one, Matt called me, I'm assuming he called you this morning, approximately 10 o'clock, to alert us that Bill has submitted this document and we should look at it. Okay. So I've only had since 10 o'clock this morning to look through this. You say that this, you call this findings of fact of the majority of the Watauga County Board of Elections. Nancy, have you had a chance to read through all of this? There's 93 points.
I put majority just to clarify, sorry to interrupt you, Nancy, because based on me being the chairman of the board.
There's 92 points, excuse me.
I tried to get to 95, but I didn't quite make it.
And then if this, if I understand this correctly, this is what you intend to submit to the state board in defense of...
That's correct.
Okay. Are you in agreement, Nancy, with these 92 statements?
I haven't read all 92 because I didn't get it until...
Okay. It's not a finding of facts. These are not actual facts. And in fact, you know, this would not be considered by a court a statement of facts. This is a string of, in many cases, unsubstantiated, I would say self-serving statements or claims, many of which are false. So I do want to, that I know to be false. So I want to
So a lot of these facts come from the Citizens Plan for Watauga County. That's a bipartisan plan that can be found on the county website.
Yes, so you reference a plan that the Democratic-controlled county commissioners approved that talk about planning, basically, to meet the needs of citizens across the county. I haven't read this plan for citizens, but I don't believe it addresses voting. Does it?
Not directly.
I do not have an issue with the first, at least the first 29. Okay? Point number 30. You state that it will take Secretary Owen approximately 45 minutes to travel from her home on Beach Mountain to the nearest early voting location. And this actually was, there was a comment earlier in the public comment period about, you know, Beach Mountain people being very, and yes, I imagine they're really far from good grocery stores and lots of other things too. For the record, we have tried to place an early voting location at the Fosco Fire Department, and guess what? They weren't agreeable. They were not agreeable. That would have been very nice, and that would have made it much more accessible to people in Beach Mountain and people in that part of the county. So it's not like we didn't try. We have tried. And ironically, they're not agreeable. You say that we, the Board of Elections, this is 32, have considered and I guess discussed early voting locations on App State campus and the Watauga campus of Caldwell Community College and Technical Institute. My first learning of any consideration of the Watauga campus of Caldwell Community College was when I read your May letter to those presidents. We have not discussed that as a board. We have not.
Until the letters.
Number 36. You say statistics prepared by certain activists showing percentage of voters between the ages of 18 to 29 and 18 to 25 appear to be calculated to produce certain results, and the majority of the Watauga County Board of Elections has been unable to ascertain the significance of such statistics. The statistics that matter and the facts are, you can very easily, from Board of Elections records, determine who voted where, the age groups of voters. So the things that have been presented to the State Board of Elections to argue for a campus site are actual facts of the number of 18 to 24-year-olds who voted in given elections and showed up at various sites. And I think it's a fact that something like 90% of the people who have early voted at the student union prior to this March primary have been in that that's where 90% of 18 to 24-year-olds chose to vote. Now those are the facts, easily ascertained from various reports that the Board of Elections is required to keep. Number 38, the voting location for Boone 3 precinct on election day is the Watauga County Agricultural Conference Center, which is located within 200 yards of the Boone 1 precinct, which is an established early voting location under this plan. Are you proposing early voting at the Agricultural Conference Center? That's what, when I first read that, I thought that's what you're saying.
No, that was correct. That's a typo. It would be, we've never considered the Agricultural Conference Center as an early voting location.
So would that one need to read an established election day voting location?
It should have been Boone 2.
Well, number 39 addresses Boone 2 and election day at Legends, and that now that's an established early voting location under your plan. So you probably need to correct point 38.
It's nice having a college professor review my findings of fact here.
Well, I'm wanting noted for the record some things that I know not to be true, so they can't possibly be facts. I haven't gotten to all of them yet.
And the fortunate part of all this is I wasn't able to respond when we had, prior to the court case with Judge Stevens. We were never given the opportunity to appear or even be a part of that lawsuit since it came from the state board. I would love the opportunity to speak to him, and I think that court case was very unfortunate, his ruling, and he did not use facts to back up the data. But since then, the court's ruled that's moot, so that's not even something we can consider at this point.
You have every opportunity to make your arguments, present evidence, documentation,
Not during that hearing,
statistics
that was the
to
state
the
board
state
election
board,
decision.
to influence the state board to adopt your plan.
We were not given an opportunity to the next level.
You say in 46, in response to the order of Honorable Donald Stevens, the Watauga County Board of Elections has studiously worked to locate a polling place acceptable to the board on the campus of Appalachian State University. Through its investigative efforts and outreach to members of the community, the board has proactively taken steps to ensure that no member of the community is discriminated against based on age or other protected classification. Other than you writing a letter to Everett and Boehm, I don't know what efforts you're talking about.
Having an early voting site on the campus, I think, is a step, wouldn't you say? It's a site within less than 200 yards of the site that you proposed. And it's a site that is much more accessible to members of the community. all.
Well, what are you talking about when you say investigative efforts and outreach to members of the community?
I've been on the board close to 3.5 years. I've witnessed a lot of elections. I've been a part of the process and have drawn these conclusions.
Number 50, Member Anderson sent a letter to those institutions, so you're referring following your May letter to Everett's, Boehm, and the SGA, advising them that they did not have to reply to the Watauga County Board of Elections and that an early voting plan would be set by the state board. The latter part of that sentence is true, the first part is false. Look at my letter and you tell me where I told Chancellor Everett she did not have to respond.
You mentioned in the letter that you advised her that she doesn't have to recommend any other sites. She doesn't have to reply back to my letter. If we can,
I suppose I need to make sure that a copy of my letter gets formally entered into the record because I wouldn't agree that that's a statement that I made either.
okay, I'll be happy to amend it to how you'd like to, for number 52 to read.
You say in 52, the Watauga County Board of Elections received a response from Chancellor Everett which did not provide any other alternatives on the campus of Appalachian State University. What she said is what she's agreeable to.
And that letter did not ask what she's agreeable to, the letter asked to provide alternatives.
As the
It's already,
head of this campus, she has every right to state what she's agreeable to, and by inference, what she's not agreeable to. She controls that campus and the use of its facilities.
I'd love a more open dialogue, which we did not receive.
Well, Bill, when you tell her, do not recommend the student union, you're inviting an open dialogue.
I've looked at those locations, and I've come back to
You-
other alternatives. I was a student at ASU for 4 years.
You do not approve of the student union.
I don't.
You-
I've witnessed
you
multiple
have-
election violations.
Okay, we're getting there. 56, the Watauga County Board of Elections considered the needs and interests of these respective institutions as part of the evaluation of potential sites upon their campuses. She is telling you in her letter, it's only a reasonable inference that you can make that she's not agreeable to, and presumably it's because it's disruptive to request Legends or the Alumni Center or the Convocation Center. That's what she's telling me. So we actually, as a board, that's false. We have not considered the needs and interests of these institutions. I have said a couple of times that I believe it's unprofessional and indefensible for us to command Legends as a revenue facility. You said, how about classroom space in the Convocation Center? And I'm like, we cannot be in the business of commanding classroom space. So, no, you've not considered the needs and interests of those institutions. You haven't. Number 57, the Watauga County Board of Elections has previously held a workshop to receive public comment regarding its early voting plans. Many individuals present did comment on its location, but the comments were divided between support for and opposition against this location. I believe this was in 2014. I'd have to look back. You made a comment that was quoted in the paper that said 90% of the people who made comments to you were in support of the student union. So I believe that statement is false. If we're talking about the same workshop to get public comment. There's a sentence at the end of 58 that seems not related to the point made in 58. All of a sudden, it refers to, for individuals not associated with the university, navigating this floor plan would be difficult. And that point is about the size of the county, two of the 6 sites being within walking distance and a mile of each other. The other early voting locations provide access, etc. So I assume that you're referring to the navigating the student union being difficult.
That is correct.
Again, you choose to go there because you find it convenient and it's your choice to go there. 59, the Plymouth Student Union at Appalachian State University is not a preferred site for an early voting location. I know that's your belief. I don't know if that's Nancy's belief or not. But the issue is that's not backed up or supported in any way by the facts, which are the demonstrated number of people who've chosen that site, utilized that site, and exercised their right to vote there. Number 60 is your reference to personally witnessing, or yes, it says the chairman of the Watauga County Board of Elections has personally witnessed prohibited push polling. I thought that happened over the phone. Campaigning, electioneering, and other buffer violations at the student union, which continue despite the demands of the chairman. The Board of Elections has also received complaints regarding the suitability of the Plymouth Student Union as a voting site, including one from the chairman of the Watauga County Republican Party, and I believe that's what you attached, which is Ms. Yates's complaint, which she directed to the North Carolina GOP. Any heavily utilized site where you have people standing in long lines, people who have every right to hold a conversation with the people who are standing around with them, candidates and their campaigns wanting to distribute literature to people. The line could very well go outside of the 50-foot buffer, especially at Legends. The student union and the enforcement and maintenance of no electioneering buffers, it is no different than any other facility that is heavily utilized where campaigns are interested in campaigning on behalf of a candidate, okay?
I think it's,
There is no difference.
I think it's very different, and the biggest difference is the multiple entrance and exits.
Then why would you propose the convocation center? The convocation center is a multi-purpose building, has I don't know how many external entrances.
We
and
voted
could
on
be-
that today. We did not vote on the convocation center, voted on Legends, so that's not even part of the discussion.
You told Chancellor Everts to please weigh in on use of the convocation center.
The letter stated to not to consider that because we've already considered it as a board member. We've talked about it, and that was not.
You told her not to consider the student union. You asked her opinion or asked for her feedback about the use of the convocation center. I submit, what is the difference between the convocation center and the student union in terms of its size and multiple entrances
Those are not the
and challenges?
That's not what we're discussing today.
Well, your argument that that electioneering cannot be enforced at the student union doesn't hold a lot of water when you were willing to put forth the convocation center as an alternative.
And then my next statement was, as long as we have an outside entrance and exit that is used, I think having an inside entrance and exit is problematic for voters to find that voting location. So continue on that.
Okay, in 61, you say that on one occasion, I think you're meaning you, were forced to remove a lady campaigning for democracy NC twice within less than 5 minutes. I believe this might have, I believe you're referring to the first day of early voting at the student union for the March primary.
Correct.
I got there to observe starting about noon and stayed the rest of the day. As I recall you mentioning to me encountering one of these democracy NC workers who was not responding very, positively or amenably to your demand that she be outside the building, outside the electioneering, but you indicated that you got her to leave. You never told me that you had other encounters with anybody else in terms of electioneering. You didn't document this through the process of documenting complaints and problems. You told me about it. I don't know if you told Matt, There is no incident report. I don't deny that you encountered one Democracy NC person.
Actually two.
Okay. So after you told me that, I walked
Three
outside.
times to leave the voting enclosure,
Okay.
and she kept relocating and.
I walked outside to where they were located outside the Greenbrier Theater, that door, that entrance to. I talked to one of the Democracy NC people. She said, in our training, we were told explicitly that yes, we are subject to the electioneering buffer, so we know that we're not supposed to. So all I can infer is that this one individual either didn't know or wasn't willing to follow the rules. Okay?
That's unfortunate. That's one of the problems I see with that location. It's impossible to enforce those buffer zones within the voting enclosure.
This woman was talking to voters in line.
Correct.
Okay, what would be different at Legends? From people talking with voters in line who will line up outside and probably in the Citgo parking lot and maybe down the sidewalk to, Hardin Street or whatever, because there'll be long lines.
It's our goal to prevent long lines. We'll work very hard as a board to actually.
Okay, but any heavily utilized site where candidates are wanting to campaign or various activist groups are wanting to.
I think it makes it challenging you brought up a good point for campaigns. They have to, if you're a candidate, you got to stand at 7 entrances instead of just 1 to pass out your material. I think it's challenging for candidates as well.
In number 16, you say the State Board of 63, the State Board of Elections received a complaint during the primary elections regarding the Plymouth Student Union that the site was hard to find and that the voter thought that the site was closed. And then Matt apparently responded to this person or the person reporting it that we have plenty of vote here signs. Why do you only include that one incident report along with this document as an exhibit that you'll submit to the state board? When I've got the stack, I didn't count them, there's probably at least 20 reporting incidents at various locations all over the county, including the complaint made about Legends. You include the one?
Those other locations are not in question, and you even said a minute ago.
Legends is in question.
You agree that these other sites are adequate. I think there'll be an opportunity for you to have a rebuttal, and I'm sure you'll welcome that, and you can submit your information to the state board, and I'll submit mine.
66. Due to the large number of inactive or transient voters, and the fact that the number of registered voters almost exceeds the number of residents according to the census numbers, which I believe you're drawing on the 2000 census, the potential for voter fraud by impersonation is higher in this area than in other areas of the state. That's not a finding of fact. And we have no evidence to suggest that anybody on campus or anywhere else in the county has ever tried to impersonate somebody else who's on the registration roll.
It could easily happen.
And would there be a difference between Legends and the student union for what's happening? Or a difference between the student union or Legends and Mount Vernon Baptist Church?
You'll have an opportunity to respond.
In 67, you say these reports are attached, and this is a reference to Chairwoman Anne Marie Yates's 2 reports of electioneering violations at Plymouth Student Union in 2014. You say these reports are attached and reflect the systematic problem of using the student union building. 2 reports of electioneering, observed electioneering, what board believed to be violation does not make a systematic problem. I'm sorry. And then you go on to insinuate that former Director Hodges did not maintain records of complaints so that they could be referenced for future consideration. I find that incredulous.
I find it hard to
Director
believe.
Hodges was a 20-something year veteran with an impeccable reputation.
So for 27 years, she had no
Including with
complaints at any election site? There wasn't a single complaint on any election site at all? I find that hard to believe there wasn't a single complaint in 27 years.
I don't know what the recommended procedures were for documenting complaints. I would venture to say that it's fairly recent that the state board has recognized, probably for good reason, that there needs to be a real systematic way of documenting complaints, and that's why they've instituted only with, I believe, starting with the March primary, that the directors are responsible for uploading to the state file system any and all incident reports in real time to document their existence. I don't know for 20-some years what the process was, and the Board of Election, you wouldn't find in the files all records from, 20-some years of elections. I absolutely go on the record as objecting to you impugning Director Hodges' character. And number 70, in considering the location of a university campus early voting location, the Watauga Board of Elections has concluded that the Legends Social Center, and I've never heard it called that before, but the Legends Social Center is the most suitable. At a minimum, please amend that and say that the majority, because do not speak for me as a member of this board. I have not concluded that Legends is the most suitable.
That's the calendar that I printed off the ASU website says Legends Social Center.
No, I'm not objecting. I just heard it as Legends. But in number 70, you say the Watauga County Board has concluded. The majority on the board might have concluded that. And again, in 71, you make reference to the 50-foot electioneering buffer can be adequately maintained for Legends. I would note that the single complaint of a believed to be violation of the electioneering buffer for the March primary was made about Legends on election day. You say in 72 that the Legends Social Center is not located in a floodplain, and while the building at one point several years past experienced water damage from runoff from an adjacent street, the university has installed a large culvert system behind the building which captures the runoff, and no substantial evidence has been presented to the board that flooding of the building remains a current and viable concern. I should have drove by there today. The last I looked, they still had sandbags stacked up at the door at the back of the building. Dave Robertson told this board in 2014 that he was sad to say that Legends was a dog of a building. That the university does not have funds to renovate or do anything with, that routinely floods when we get heavy rains, has no backup generator. If the lights go out, it's completely dark because there are no windows in there. The faults associated with Legends, I think can be called facts. And it's indisputable that stacked up against the student union, any concern about multiple entrances and monitoring and buffering or whatever pales in comparison to the dog of a building that Legends is. You say in 73, the majority of board members have been unable to detect the musty smell alleged by member Anderson to exist at the Legends Social Center. That reference came from an accessibility survey that Director Hodges was required to complete, looking at all aspects of Legends when you move the polling place from the student union, election day polling place from the student unions to Legends, and she's the one who documented problems breathing and the musty smell, which would probably not be much of a surprise given that the university had said this building repeatedly floods, they have to suck out the water that comes in the back doors, that soaks the carpet, the flooring, etc. They turn big fans on for days on end to try to dry it out.
I think that culvert system has taken care of that, which was previously stated.
I've already addressed 75. You indicate that there would be no foregone events for use of legends. You further comment at some place in here that they can't really raise that much money at a $2 a ticket entrance thing. You know, that's not our consideration. And I've already told you that there's a process that the university routinely goes through to try to book a band in there every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night that they possibly can while classes are in session. The fact that there aren't any or weren't any in May or June does not mean that they wouldn't be about the business of trying to get them booked in there. And that typically they would. Typically they would. Under 87, Watauga County Board of Elections has attempted to negotiate an alternative location with Member Anderson on the campus of Appalachian State University, but Member Anderson has not provided any potential alternatives to the Plymouth Student Union. I want the record to reflect that I have made my objection to the use of alternative facilities of Legends, McKinney Alumni Center, and Convocation Center perfectly clear. And they're reasonable objections because use of those facilities will be disruptive to the university, and I believe that that is indefensible on the part of this board. To commandeer places that will disrupt. In fact, your letter from the Caldwell Community College president said that it would be extraordinarily disruptive to their operations for us to have to use classroom space out there, and that they might love to have early voting out there, but they don't have a space that they can give up for 10 days on end for early voting, even if they wanted to. And they certainly cannot give up classroom space. This is not, you know, you can call this a finding of fact and present 90-some points that you can characterize as facts. These are not facts. It's not, a court of law does not view these things as facts, and many of them are false.
That will conclude our discussion on and we've already had the vote. That was 2-1, so we will file our, I'm sure Member Anderson will file her appeal. The next step, this will go in front of the state board of elections. I'm not sure when their hearing will be, but I'm sure they'll make an announcement of that. Item number 8.
I have one more statement.
Okay.
Let the record reflect that you must file notice requesting Legends to the university. And you have to do it no later than July 27th, because that's the 90-day mark prior to the start of early voting. And you must give the university 20 days to respond. And if the university responds negatively, that they're not in agreement for Legends, then there has to be some process where we all have some kumbaya, I guess, and try to work it out.
Okay. Director Snyder, would you be able to assist with that? Sir. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So next agenda item is discussion of a new hire. We had a staff member relocate to West Virginia. The next item is going to be a closed session meeting since it's a personnel discussion. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?